Hello everybody, my name is Tyler Lloyd, and today I'm going to be doing a few different soil tests and comparing the results between them for things like pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Now, I already went ahead and sent off a soil sample to the University of Kentucky to their lab to do, an official soil test. So I'm going to be looking at these results for this soil test, which actually was pretty cheap. You can get these soil tests for, I think, $7 or maybe $14. I'll put the amount that it would have cost me if I had to pay that, but you get free vouchers, at least in Kentucky, for certain soil districts. So definitely check out in your local area, your state, if you have access to free soil test for a lab. But even if you have access to a lab, I would still recommend maybe checking out a test like this, because they're only going to give you like 1 or 2 free tests a year, and you may have many different tests that you need to do. But let's just get into these tests right now. So without further ado, no more pontificating on my part, I'm going to start with this rapid soil test. Now this is one of the kind of cheaper options that you can get from your big box stores. This is from Luster Leaf Rapid Test. Now, I've already taken my soil sample, and this is the same soil sample that I sent off to this lab. When taking your soil sample, you want to make sure that you get a representative soil sample. You don't want to just get the very top. You want to dig a hole first and then cut along the edges to get a nice zone of all the different areas where those roots are going to be hitting to get a good representation of your soil. You want it to be dried out a little bit, and then I went ahead and broke up any of the clumps and then sifted it to make sure that I had a nice soil sample here to be able to test. Now, the one that I sent off to the lab wasn't as processed as this. They have their own machines, so that may have changed things a little bit. But let's start off with the pH test. And all of these directions are going to be different for these individual tests between the rapid test and here. And I'm not going to go through step by step. I'm just going to show you generally kind of how you do these tests. Fill the test chamber to soil to the fill line. So you've got to take these green pills. They're all color-coded. And then I'm going to open up the pill, because that is what's going to have the reagent for the pH tests to get all that in there. So you want to do this very carefully. Well, so I spilt a little bit. See, this is the difficulty with tests like this. They're made for ease of use, but with that comes a lack of precision. And this says use this little dropper and add water to the fill line. Now I have instead put water in here. Now this is distilled water. Distilled water is going to be one of your best things, because while I love and drink tap water, that's going to have other potentially dissolved solids, chlorine, and other things that will react. So you want just pure water. So I'm going to add that to my fill line. Cap, make sure it's sealed properly, and shake. Shake this thoroughly, and then allow it to sit and develop for about a minute. So it's been about a minute, so now I'm going to compare the color of the solution to the color chart here, and I'm going to hold it up to the window. You want daylight, but not direct sunlight. If you're inside, do not put it up against like a lamp or overhead lights, because the color temperature of those lights will skew your result. 7.5, so very, so alkaline. I don't know, very alkaline. So I have an alkaline pH here. And now I'm going to repeat relatively the same thing with the N, P, and K test. But for these tests, it's a little bit different, that you had to previously mix up a 1:5 ratio of soil to water. Now I did that by weight, not by volume, because that makes the most sense. Weighed that out, shook it up, and it has been sitting for more than an hour now. Still cloudy, but it'll be totally fine. It says so in the directions. I'm not just making that up here. My nitrogen deficit and then a surplus may be sufficient for both my potassium and my phosphorus. Now I'm excited for this test kit right here. So this is the LaMotte Gardening Guide Soil Test Kit. It's kind of the best, consumer soil test kit that you can get. I got it for, I think, $70 on Amazon last year, actually, but I never ended up using it last year. I just depended on some soil tests from the lab from Kentucky. So I'm interested to see how this compares. So it's cleaning up my area here, and I'm going to repeat all these tests with this test kit that, it just looks more professional. I mean, we got multiple little droppers, different vials of reagent, these little capsules here for the phosphorus tablets. We got tablets for the potassium, indicator solutions, these tiny little spoons. Just feels like I'm back working in a lab. So gonna get some gloves and do all the same tests, and I will be back with the results. If you use the LaMotte test kit, be sure to wear gloves because some of the solutions can be somewhat hazardous. And definitely read all of the directions before you start each of the individual tests because everyone varies ever so slightly. And lay out all of the things that you need because there's different extracting solutions and reagents for each one, and you don't want to mix those up. Okay, I have wrapped up the LaMotte test now, and now I'm going to compare everything. So I've got my rapid test results that I did, the LaMotte, and the ones from the University of Kentucky lab. So let's go through and just see how they all compare. For the rapid soil test, it showed that my pH was 7.5 plus. That's as high as it went on the scale. For the LaMotte test, it had either 7 or 8, but it clearly looked like it was definitely closer to 8. And then my soil pH here, which gave me, a more exact number, was 7.6. So I've got a high pH, gonna need to bring that down. I'm gonna use some sulfur for that, but it takes time to do. So that's why it's good to maybe have a test that you can do at home to see how that is progressing. Nitrogen, this is an interesting one. For the rapid test, deficit. For the LaMotte test, only trace amounts. For the lab test, didn't actually test for it. And they say why. I was originally annoyed. Why didn't you test nitrogen? Like everyone talks about nitrogen in your soil. It's important. But nitrogen is not tested in soil since it is present in organic matter and the amount made available to plants through microbial activity is difficult to test. But it did give me recommendations for how to add and the rates of adding, and this is based on the soil composition in my locality in Kentucky. So that's very valuable information. And one of the good reasons with going with a lab, especially a university lab through your extension service. But let's keep going. So then the potassium, so a surplus on the rapid test, very high on the LaMotte test, and then a very high on my soil test report. And then so that was potassium and phosphorus. Phosphorus surplus on the rapid test, high on the LaMotte test, very high on my soil test report. So I've got almost no nitrogen, lots of phosphorus and potassium. So if I was doing a traditional fertilizer, now you'll see those values at NPK, the 3 numbers there. I would want something with a very big, large, first number and like 0. And because I also have a high pH, I know that they make some fertilizers that also have that sulfur in there. So I would go with something, I think they make a 2500 with 25% sulfur content. That would be good if I was going a traditional fertilizer route. I may do that on my large plot that I'm developing because I also got test for it, which were very similar. Actually, it has even higher pH. But that I tend to prefer things that are a little bit more slow release over time for the nitrogen. I just don't want to dump a bunch of like super bioavailable nitrogen. Maybe I'll make another video about that. But overall, this test, which is the cheapest at-home test you could do, was well worth it. I don't know if the LaMotte was any better. It was fun playing around with the little vials and solutions. Made me feel like I was back in chemistry class and my like water sampling analysis classes that I took in undergrad and grad school. But this test was had pretty much the same sort of level of information. So definitely worth getting something like this. It's got 40 tests in it, but really that 40 is that there's 10 of each of the 4 tests. It would be good to monitor different locations, because especially with pH, you're going to have different crops are going to want different pH levels. I'm eventually going to be doing some blueberries. That's going to want to be acidic. But then things like your regular traditional crops are going to want something, in the 6.5 to 7 range. Apparently asparagus from this chart can take up to 8. So all good information to know, and it's good to be able to test your various locations for your various things that you're trying to grow, and also throughout the year, because it will change as you start amending the soil. So you can see, is what you're doing working. So I would definitely recommend, picking up something like this rapid test. I'll link to one down below. I'll link to this one if I can. So that is all I have for today. Oh, actually, one more thing. Even though the fancy soil test had sort of similar results, one thing nice about a more in-depth soil test, it's going to show you things like calcium, magnesium, zinc. You can get one for trace metals. You can get it for heavy metals to know if you've got contamination of lead or other things that could be detrimental to you, which you're not going to be able to do with a home test kit. So there is value in sending it off to a lab. But for your basic stuff, you're probably better off with just getting a rapid test, or just as good. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I ended up making it not too long. I want to try to condense things together. So with that, I'm going to end this video so I have an opportunity to clean all of this up before my wife comes home, because my kitchen is an utter mess. Wish you the best. See you later. Bye.